of people in the Bible who are each of these. So for those of you who scored highest on relational, you're in good company. Barnabas in the book of Acts, he was always working in relationships. He was always a sidekick. He was a big brother, if you will. He always came along. He saw the relationship side of it. When there was that feud between him and Saul, or Paul, what was the battle over? It was over relationships and growing John Mark. Matthew was the same way. We call Matthew parties because of Levi. When he came to Christ, he didn't know how to express to all of his friends other than to throw a party and invite Jesus there. So those are two guys who, if you want to follow up after tonight, this is where you scored really high. Look these guys up in the Bible and see how they live their lives. See how they express that. Celebrators. Number one comes to most people's minds, David. He was the one who danced before the Lord. He wrote most of the Psalms. He played music. He sang music. He prayed music. Other is Miriam. A lot of people don't see that a lot, but in the Old Testament, throughout the different things that the Israelites encountered in the desert, whenever something good happened, you'll read that Miriam sang a song and she danced and she praised the Lord. So if God is welling something up inside of you to just get excited and go nuts, this is probably someone you might want to read about. Naturalists. There's multiple psalmists, obviously David being a primary one, but they often compared their feelings and their world and what they were dealing with what was going on in nature. Solomon, throughout a lot of the Proverbs, he compares attributes we need to have with attributes that animals or creatures or the earth itself. The book of Job, even though we don't know if Job was a naturalist himself, a lot of the discussion in Job is, especially in the latter part of the book, is God saying, hey, this is all the stuff that I've done around you naturally. This is why you should be in awe. Intellectuals, if you scored high, you're in good company with the Apostle Paul. He loved to debate. He loved to reach to people through their minds. He was very adamant. Truth came often for him more than love, so that's something you have to be careful of. Also, Nicodemus, he was a searcher. He came to Jesus because he'd done the math of all the Pharisees' life that he'd lived and the lives he was seeing from other people, and he approached Jesus from an intellectual basis. Servers, if this is you, you might want to look up Dorcas in the book of Acts. She was known, the only thing we know about her is that she sewed for other people, that she gave of herself so much to other people that when she died, the church came to Peter and said, you got to raise this woman from the dead because she's serving all of us. We don't know how to live our life without her. Ruth, same way. Ruth stayed on when her culture told her it was okay to go ahead and remarry and go back to her home people. She said, no, I'm going to serve my mother-in-law. I'm going to move where she is. I'm going to work in the fields, provide for my family. So there's another person you can look up and read their story if that's something that resonates in you. Activists, Peter was always ready. What can I do, God? Whose ear can I cut off? I'm never going to leave you. I'm going to be your man. I'm going to charge into the kingdom for you. Nehemiah, for those of you who went through the truth works with us in the Old Testament, Nehemiah, every time he was given a challenge, he's like, all right, let's go do this. And within a few verses, he's taken care of it or put motion in order. He's just bam, bam, all right, next. And every problem that was given to him, he wanted to go find a solution. And then he gave the credit to God instead of himself, which is a key thing that you need to remember if you're an activist. Because you can take credit inside saying, look what we did for God, instead of look what God did through us. Contemplatives. We know that Enoch must have been a contemplative person because he was alone with God when God took him. He was one of the few people in the Bible who never died. It said he was just walking with Jesus and God took him up. So if you're in that kind of relationship with Jesus and you're walking alone, I have to imagine that you're in this mindset, if you will. Daniel, famous for spending days and weeks on end praying in his room, one-on-one with God, asking for God's help, thinking about God, contemplating his background, and then taking that into action and saying, no, I'm not going to eat the king's meat. No, I'm not going to bow to your gods. No, I'm not going to do what your pagan culture is asking me to do. So you're in good company. And Jesus, throughout the Bible, realizes through these characters, and you can go on and on through the Bible. I tried to limit it to a New Testament and Old Testament person per category. But he understands that we're wired differently because he wired us. He understands that we're going to be different. He is a God who's expressed in creativity. Only God would want us all to be so different that we would need him. The key for us then is not just to figure this out for us and to improve our worship and our relationship, though that should be huge. And that's what I hope when you take these home tonight, that you go, I'm going to look into this further. I'm going to see what God is doing in me, where I come alive the most. One, so that you can do more of that. And two, also to see where you're weak. Just because, and those of you who are married know this, just because your wife has one primary love language doesn't mean you don't express the other four. We try to develop the other four to where we're giving her a full package. I tend to think of my dog as needing all five. It's perfect. Every dog I know needs all five of those love languages. And over time, what we want to do is develop all five of these as ways to express to God, even those where we're weak, and to pray and ask God, hey, I want to express my love to you fully. And this is where it comes naturally to me, and you may be calling me to express it in a way that's not natural to me. So that's what our take-home is going to be, and I'll bring that back around when we're finished. But go ahead and pull out the purple sheet. That's what we're going to do for the rest of our time tonight. Because it's not just enough, again, as I said, to find out how we're wired and go, oh, that's nice, and go home tomorrow and not think about it. Everybody gets a set of the questions that we're going to go through tonight. And you don't have to answer all of them. We don't have hours to be here. But if there's one of these that goes pound and you feel God hit you with it, that's the question you should probably answer, and that's the one that God should be praying over you. So I'll read the questions through here, and then we'll release it out to ask each other. Do you have a category for personal worship? Do you see this as something that would enrich, that is a personal level, not just something you do on Sunday mornings or at church events? Have you experienced a personal relationship with God? If you have not experienced a personal relationship with God, you can't be expressing love. If you've never met the girl you're going to marry or your girlfriend, you can't express love to her until you've met her and until you've even started that relationship. So have you started that? And if not, what's holding you back? If you have, are you leveraging what you learned tonight? Are you leveraging your unique bent to enrich your relationship with Christ? How are you developing that part? For me, it's how often am I getting out and going hiking or getting in a canoe or sitting and listening to the rain? For you, it might be different things. And if you are doing that, how? If you aren't, what are some of the steps you could take? I mean, I'm not asking you to change life overnight, but what are the first steps? If you were to walk out of here and say, tomorrow, something's going to change in me and I'm going to try to develop this better, what are those steps that you could take to increase both the frequency and the richness of your interaction with God through your spiritual pathway? And finally, and this is something I hope we can all get to at the table, how can you use your pathway to reach others? Maybe it's reaching others with your pathway. Maybe it's reaching others who don't know that there is a pathway. I printed out an extra 10 or 12 tonight. If there's someone in your life, you go, you know what? They really need to know that God loves them the way they feel loved, that God hears their worship the way that they express it, that God understands the way they're wired. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend. You can make as many copies. This isn't copyrighted material. How are we leveraging what God is doing in us for other people? For instance, HB takes people canoeing, and I take people hiking. There are people here who they'll go grab people and they'll go sing together, they'll cook. I was listening to stories yesterday of kind of a de facto small group that's happened around people cooking. They just love to cook. They're relational. It's something to do together. That's something that they've developed. They realize that when they hang out with other Christian women, good things happen. God things happen. Conversations go around God. Maybe it's you need to go out and buy a book or follow a podcast or go to the Outfitter and look up ways to bring people in your home and say, hey, I got a DVD I want to show you, or let's do a Bible study or a book study. I think what you're going through. So how can you take the way you're programmed, the way you're wired, and the people in your life, mix that together for God's greatest benefit? So those are the questions around your table. Answer the one that pricks you. At 5 till, we'll come back together. 1, 2, 3, go.